Good morning to you. It's Phil Thatch, and as promised, I am back in the blind today with completely different gear. Today I have my old Nikon D500 and the 200 to 500 continuous f5.6 telephoto lens. And this used to be my absolute favorite camera gear for bird photography. Of course, now it's been passed by newer, more modern mirrorless cameras, quieter mirrorless cameras, and I just can't bear to get rid of this camera because it's meant so much to me as a bird photography camera. I think I bought this thing maybe in 2016, maybe even before that, but I think it was 2016 when I got the D500, and it's kind of the last great APS-C DSLR. And I never did buy the D850 back in the day, but after years and years, I did end up buying a D850. So now I have the last great APS-C DSLR and the last great full-frame DSLR. And you know, they've kind of replaced the D850. They've got a mirrorless camera of the same quality as the D850, and that's the Z8. But they still haven't replaced the D500. So one day they will. But today I'm in the blind. I'm going to try to get some bird photography done with this camera. And I've gotten spoiled by cameras that don't make any noise. But listen what happens when I press the shutter on this thing. It's noisy. So we'll see if that spooks the bird. I'll keep you posted. My first bird has arrived. It's a tufted titmouse, which last time I was in the blind using the Canon gear, there were lots of tufted titmouse. I don't know about lots, but there were some that came. So I guess that's kind of expected. So let's take a look at the first shots with the D500. All right, here it is, the first picture of the morning, a beautiful close-up of a tufted titmouse. This is at 300 millimeters using the D500 and the 200 to 500 lens. I'm going to shoot all of these shots wide open at f5.6. This one is at 1/250th of a second, and auto ISO landed me at ISO 2500. Beautiful tufted titmouse. Well, the tufted titmouse has come back quite a few times. It was just yesterday when I made the video with the R7 and the inexpensive 100 to 400 lens. And so, you know, usually I don't have the good nut and berry bird seed out here every day, but because I'm shooting 2 days in a row, I've got it out here 2 days in a row, and those titmice remember where they got some good food yesterday morning, so they came back in a pretty good bit. And so far, as I make a burst with the noisy, by comparison, D500, it has not spooked them. But I do recall in the past, a noisy camera would spook a cardinal. Of course, I didn't get any cardinals yesterday either, so anyway, let's look at some more titmouse pictures. Here's another tufted titmouse. This time it's got some of that fancy bird seed, a nice nut in its mouth, and I've got the Leland cypress in the background. Happy with the way this shot came out. This is 300 millimeters ISO 1000 and 1/200th of a second, and of course all of these shots are wide open at 5.6. This is a different perch, same bird and a different seed. 310 millimeters ISO 720 this time and 1/250th of a second. Another beautiful tufted titmouse. I was so happy to see them back this morning. Starting to get some Carolina chickadee activity, and I'm always happy to get a photograph of a Carolina chickadee. Let's take a look at some of those. Now here is a Carolina chickadee on one of my perches. I love the brown breast on this one. This is 310 millimeters ISO 800 and 1/320th of a second of the beautiful Carolina chickadee. Love the background in this series of shots of the Carolina chickadee. It's on one of my perches that comes up at an angle, and it's gone down and gotten some bird seed, and before it left it posed for me a little bit. This is 310 millimeters. My shutter speed is up to 1/400th now. Still wide open at 5.6 and ISO 800 for this one. And then here's another shot, same settings except my ISO did drop to 1600 for this one. Pretty happy with both of these shots. I just love the background in these shots. That's the Leland cypress there in the background, and it's got some light on it,
that's not on the bird, but the light wasn't drastically different, so it came out pretty nice.
I'm seeing mostly tufted titmice and Carolina chickadees, which is fine. Love both of those birds. I did see a downy woodpecker, but it was on the suet feeder and only on the suet feeder.
This is the downy woodpecker. It's a male. You can see just a little bit of red feathering right back here. Really happy to get this shot, and it was horribly underexposed. This background is grass in the distance, and it had direct sunlight on it, and there was no direct sunlight on the bird. So I'm using auto ISO, so the camera set up for the background being so bright, and I raised the exposure 3 stops to get the bird to look right. This is 1/500th of a second now, 310 millimeters, wide open at 5.6, and the ISO is only 180. So like I say, I raised the exposure up 3 stops to get it to look pretty good. This perch has my suet feeder on it. It's attached to it right around here with a zip tie, and I used AI in Adobe's Photoshop to remove it, but I'll show you what it looked like before I removed it. This is after the edit, but before I removed the suet feeder, and I kind of like it even this way, but I like it much better after I've used AI to remove it.
Lots of chipmunk activity as well. They remember the food was here yesterday and have come back.
I put out the bird seed to bring in the birds, but the majority of it is eaten by this fellow and his friends. What a cutie though. I don't mind at all that he comes up and gets my bird seed, because it gives me an opportunity to make a photo of him. This is also 310 millimeters, 1/400th of a second, wide open at 5.6, and ISO 800 of the cute little chipmunk right on the handrail of my back porch. And you can see one of my perches there behind him to his left and our right, that sometimes I get pictures of birds on the top of that.
I'm using my new tripod collar and Arca Swiss foot by Hoage that I reviewed a while back. It's really working well here on the 200 to 500. It's a pretty cool product.
This is a female house finch on one of my perches. This is 1/400th of a second, still at 310 millimeters. My ISO is only 900 for this shot, and of course I'm still wide open at 5.6. These are kind of plain birds, the house finch, but sometimes their poses are just so regal looking, and this is an example of that. And now here's a male house finch. This is 1/400th, 310 millimeters, ISO 1100, still wide open at 5.6. The males have the red and the females don't have the red. And this shot came out pretty good as well with the D500 and the 200 to 500 lens.
The noise from the D500 doesn't seem to bother the Carolina chickadees, and it doesn't seem to bother the tufted titmouse. But when the female red-bellied woodpecker landed on my stump perch, it definitely spooked her. That's the bad news. The good news is I think I got a somewhat acceptable shot on the first click. So if that does turn out okay, here it is.
This is the female red-bellied woodpecker. You can tell she's a female because the orange feathers here don't go all the way to her beak. They stop about the top of her head here. And this was the very first shot. I got her in focus and fired off about 3 shots. And the very first shot, she hadn't heard the camera yet, so she didn't run off. The next shot, she was flying away. And this is only 220 millimeters. And even at 220, I've still cut off some of the bottom of the bird. I really could have used the 180 to 600 for this shot. Of course, it doesn't work with an F-mount camera. 220 millimeters, 1/640th of a second, wide open at 5.6, and 110 ISO. This perch has bright light on it, but shade on the grass in the background, which is much better than shade on the perch and sun on the grass in the background.
The next bird that came up to the porch was the male red-bellied woodpecker, and I did a few shots with the D500 and it didn't spook him, but then he started behaving almost like the D500 was another woodpecker drumming, kind of flexed his feathers up on the top of his head, so that was interesting.
Now this is the male red-bellied woodpecker. You can tell it's a male because it has orange all the way from its beak to the back of its head. Beautiful, beautiful bird. And the noisy D500 did not spook it as it was there on my stump perch. This is 200 millimeters, 1/640th of a second, wide open at 5.6, and the ISO is 125. Here's another shot in that same sequence, same exact settings. I thought both of them were worth sharing with you. And here is another one. Remember I mentioned that it could hear the D500 and it behaved almost like it was hearing another red-bellied woodpecker drumming as I was making shots of it, and it kind of raised these feathers up at attention on top of its head. Really glad I captured this shot. Same settings, 1/640th, 200 millimeters, f5.6, and ISO 125. Now it's moved around to the side of my stump perch, which is really a great perch for bird photography there on my back porch. And even at 200 millimeters, I still clipped off just a little bit of its tail feathers, which I was unhappy about. This is 200 millimeters, 1/640th, f5.6, and ISO 140. And in this shot, you can see some of the namesake red belly on the red-bellied woodpecker down here. Really happy to get these woodpecker shots. Yesterday when I was working, I didn't get any woodpecker shots.
I saw a northern flicker, which is really cool. Not close, but it did land on the next door neighbor's back porch. And so because I have 500 millimeters and 750 full frame equivalent on this 1.5 crop D500, I did get a shot of it just on the neighbor's back porch. Probably not very artistically pleasing, but it was cool to see a northern flicker this morning.
And now here is a third woodpecker. Of course, this photograph is terrible. This is very far away, and I'm using all 500 millimeters and cropping substantially. 500 millimeters, 1/640th, f5.6, and ISO 100 of the northern flicker on my next door neighbor's back porch. It looks like the focus is more on this piece of wood that the bird is on. It's just not a good picture, but I shared it with you so you can see that I've got a third woodpecker species in the northern flicker. Here's a beautiful example of a male house finch there on my stump perch. This is 320 millimeters, 1/800th of a second, wide open at 5.6, and ISO 200. What a beauty.
Next I saw some mourning doves.
And this is the mourning dove there on the back porch, kind of in between two of my perches. You can actually even see, I meant to take this out, you can see the screw that holds this perch onto the porch, and you can see another perch going up in the background. I have perches, they're spaced to where usually if I'm taking a picture of one perch, the other perch is not in the shot. But if the bird's in between a couple of the perches, you can see both of them. But this is the mourning dove with bright morning sun on it.
Well, the chipmunk has made off with all of my bird seed. So I don't think I'll be seeing too many more birds out here this morning. So this is a good enough time to call it quits for the day and go inside and get to work on these pictures. I've enjoyed using the old 200 to 500 lens and the D500, and really enjoyed my new Arca Swiss included tripod collar and foot from Hoage. That thing's really cool. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit thumbs up. If you want to see some more stuff like this, subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye-bye.